good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this week's episode, a special Thanksgiving episode of Roundabout Sports, presented by Interstate 70 Sports Media.
What?
Where our passion is our profession.
Tom Turkey makes an appearance.
I'm the maestro, Jeremy Carpenter. Alongside me is a man that's probably had too much to drink before the start of the show. Everyone's favorite umpire, Hollywood James Knox, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, good evening, Jeremy. I thought I'd throw you a curveball there with that.
That was a curveball. Oh, my God. Well, first off, before we go over what we're going to be talking about on tonight's show, you have some breaking news regarding the St. Louis Blues.
Yes. Blues were down 1-0 going into the second period in Buffalo, and as they did last week, as when we started this show, this time they get a power play goal from Pavel Buchnevich to tie it up at 1. So we are 1-1, 18:35 to go in the second period.
All right. Well, I will gladly take that. I'll tell you that much right now. Folks, there's a lot to talk about, but it's a special edition because coming up this Saturday night, WWE Survivor Series. And one of the big 4, although maybe big 5 pay-per-views, depending on the future of Money in the Bank. And this is going to be the 36th annual Survivor Series event. Wow. Can you believe that, James? 36 Survivor Series have been...
Wow, that's crazy.
It is. And
I didn't realize we were already at 36.
Right, no kidding. And, folks, we're going to be going over what's going to be going on this Saturday night at Saturday night's event, but we're also going to be going into the history books as some of the greatest and worst moments in the history of Survivor Series, because there are plenty of debuts, returns, matches, reveals to go through, and we look forward to going through a bunch of them. We're also going to be talking about shortly some of the hottest topics in sports with our trending topics segment. And of course, feel free to please share, subscribe, like, comment, have any questions you want to drop in. We will be sure to get them on the air. We always appreciate the audience feedback. And with that, tomorrow night, or I guess tomorrow in general, Thanksgiving, my favorite holiday of the year. I don't know about you. It's absolutely my favorite because, they didn't make my birthday a national holiday. So I guess I have to pick Thanksgiving as a national holiday, which I love. But with that comes the 3 F's: family, food, and football. And we have 3 games that are going to be going on tomorrow. Start off with the Detroit Lions taking on the Buffalo Bills in Detroit, which is funny because the Bills just got done playing a home game in Detroit because Buffalo was covered in 6 feet of snow. And then you got the Dallas Cowboys taking on the New York Giants. Well, we switch left of the Giants, considering the injuries they're going to be dealing with.
No doubt.
And then the night game is going to be one that you are intrigued about, especially the New England Patriots taking on the Minnesota Vikings, who definitely have a big chip on the shoulder considering what happened to them last week when they lost 40-3 against Dallas. But they were 8-1.
Well, that game was over really before it started. I mean, they couldn't keep Kirk Cousins upright. Cowboys get 8 sacks against Kirk Cousins. Offense couldn't really get anything going. And that game is the one that I find to be the most interesting, only because you're talking about a New England Patriots team. And look, we all know their offense hasn't been anything to write home about unless Bailey Zappe's been under center. But last week, it's 3-3. They win the game on a kick return touchdown or a punt return touchdown, which I'm still not sure what happened there. If I'm a special teams coach, coordinator, whatever, you've got to kick that ball out of bounds. But,
Whoa, that's on me.
Myself.
Yeah, I know. That's what you sound. That's what happens when it pops up on my phone. But yes, that's your voice, James. You gotta love it.
But the Patriots have not allowed a touchdown in back-to-back games. You're looking at a team that they are 6-0 when they allow 17 points or less, and that's kind of what all Patriots teams have hung their hat on. Even when Tom Brady was there, they've been defensive minded. So I think that it's going to be the high-powered offense of the Minnesota Vikings up against the New England Patriots. That game being at home for Minnesota, I don't think it matters. I still think that that's probably a one-score game, and it wouldn't surprise me if New England goes into Minneapolis and knocks off the Vikings tomorrow night.
The game that intrigues me the most out of it, and I know that for Minnesota, I mean, you're still 8-2, which is very crucial, and you're still well ahead of all the other teams in the NFC North because they've been atrocious this year.
Right.
But when I look at important games tomorrow, I honestly look at the Bills and Lions game. Lions are riding a 3-game win streak here. They're not completely out of the playoff hunt yet, which is really funny to think about, considering the mess that is known as the NFC at the moment.
No doubt.
And you look, Jared Goff's having himself a pretty solid season, especially with the receivers he has. Even though Josh Reynolds has been out the past few weeks, you got Amon-Ra St. Brown, Kadamian Raymond. And even though they traded away TJ Hawkinson before the trade deadline, Lions still go out there and win. And the running back group has definitely helped. DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams. I mean, can't go wrong there.
Well, and that's what I was going to say too. They've been able to run the ball effectively with Swift and Williams, and if you can continue to run the ball effectively, you keep a defense from being able to pin their ears back and just come after the quarterback. And that's something that they've done all year long. That's something that Dan Campbell and his coaching staff have kind of preached, is like, look, we're going to continue to run the ball. Even if it's only 3 yards, 2 or 3 yards, I mean, sooner or later, you're setting yourself up to get one of those chunk plays. And we saw that last week against the Giants. I mean, DeAndre Swift had a really good game. And, a lot of that was in the first quarter, early second quarter. They weren't getting, 4 or 5 yards per rush. It was 2-3 yards, but you were able to continuously do that and tire down the defense, and they stuck with it, and it helped them upset the New York Giants 31-16. And, that's kind of what makes the Lions a dangerous team. I mean, Buffalo's had to travel to Detroit, then they traveled back home, and they'll travel to Detroit again. If the Bills are overlooking the Detroit Lions, they come up and bite your kneecaps, as Dan Campbell would preach. So you're right. It's a Thanksgiving game in Detroit as well. And in those games, I think as any athlete, when it comes to a holiday or a big event game, if you can't get up for those games, you probably need to step away from the sport that you're playing. And I think all the pomp and circumstance play into that. And that's something that the Lions look forward to. And look, they're 4-7, but you're on a 3-game winning streak. And this team is playing with a lot of confidence right now. And sometimes confidence is better than talent. Update from the Buffalo-St. Louis game right now. The Sabres lead the Blues 3-1.
Well,
that went quick.
Yeah. Maryland went live on the air about 10 minutes ago, and the Blues tied it.
Yeah, Sabres went on the power play and scored. And this line of Tage, Thompson, Skinner, and Alex Tuck has been pretty dangerous. But they just scored. And Bennington got a piece of it with his glove, but it wasn't enough. So Blues trail with 14:03 to go in the second period. They're down 3-1.
Well. Damn. Well, there's still plenty of time to go, thankfully, and hopefully. It's nice seeing the Blue, even win or lose tonight, it's nice seeing them bounce back from their 8-game losing streak. And they're entering tonight on a 7-game winning streak, which we'll talk about in just a couple minutes.
Right.
There is one other piece of NFL news I want to bring up. Well, actually, there's 2 pieces. The first is
hide the moms.
Anything, yeah, exactly where I was going with this. The fact that the New York Jets have benched second-year pro Zach Wilson in favor of Mike White. They're not even starting Joe Flacco, who, look, elite jokes aside, for 37 years old, he's still a really damn good quarterback.
Yep.
And he's helped the Jets tremendously this year. Now, Zach Wilson is 5-2 as a starter this season, but that's not all because of Zach Wilson per se. And after all, they only scored 3 points last week. He's lost a lot of confidence from the players, from the coaches. This is a chance for him to get a reset, as head coach Robert Saleh says. And I just want to know what you think about, especially heading into a game against this tough Bears defense. What do you think's going on in the mind of the New York Jets front office and
I thought
coaching
it
staff?
I thought it was real interesting that Robert Saleh had to say that, them benching Zach Wilson wasn't putting a nail in his coffin, that his career in New York wasn't over, and it wasn't over by a long shot. First of all, to have to come out and say that, it kind of makes me wonder if there's more to this story or more that we're not hearing. Obviously, he came out and made the comment that the game that he didn't feel like he didn't let his defense down, and that he didn't, there was nothing there, that it was windy out, and it was like, okay, look, yes, the weather was bad, there was a bad crosswind. You don't come out and say that. It just makes it sound like you're making excuses. I don't know. The front office has got to be thinking, look, we drafted Zach Wilson and we could have had this quarterback or that quarterback. I wonder if they regret not, maybe, picking a Trey Lance or somebody else. But I just want see and I don't think they do. And here's why. Because, if your head coach comes out and says, hey, look, his career here is by far not over. I think that Zach Wilson is young, and we both know he is. He's also extremely immature. And, it took a lot of athletes that were young at that point, and you gave them a ton of money, and it took them time to grow up. And this is something that Zach Wilson is learning. You have to learn not only how to play the game at the NFL, the professional level, because it's a much quicker game than in college, but you also have to learn the other, ins and outs, the other facets of the game when it comes to being mature. I mean, sure, he should have come out and said, yeah, look, he goes, I let my defense down. I didn't score. I didn't do this. Look, not Jalen. Oh, goodness. Quarterback for the Bears. Why am I drawing
Justin Fields?
Thank you. Justin Fields come out and said, yeah, look, my defense kept me in this game and we didn't win it, and he took all of the responsibility for them not winning. And so, look, it's young, it's maturity. I don't think they'll go out and get another quarterback. One, they're not going to have a very high draft pick this year the way they're playing, because, look, Mike White is perfectly fine of stepping in and winning them a ball game. We saw him do that last year when they had injuries at the quarterback position. So he just needs to grow into his NFL skin, if you will. And I think this is a learning curve for him.
Well, and on top of that, you take into account that the quarterback class heading into 2023 is a very weak one, especially compared to the years past in the NFL. So the Jets, I mean, CJ Stroud is probably the best quarterback that's going to be coming out of, out of college. And like you said, the Jets aren't really going to have a high enough draft pick. They've already, I mean, in a weird way to say, but they've won too many games,
Right.
Which is something that you don't want to tank unless it's for a really prize player. But
I mean,
at the same time, when you're the Jets, you're like, look, we have this much talent. Now let's actually utilize it and try to surprise some people, get ourselves a wild card spot.
right. And look, you're looking at what CJ Stroud and Bryce Young are really the two strong quarterbacks coming out of college this year. And, I don't think Bryce Young doesn't fit the Jets offense as it's currently constructed. CJ Stroud, big arm, some questionable decision making. I guess that goes for Bryce as well, because Bryce, he looks, for his first two reads and then he takes off running. So, and by the time the Jets pick, both those guys are going to be off the board. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. So yeah, look, the Jets are going to have to ride with him and see if they can, continue to build that team around him. My concern is he doesn't mature, and you're trying to build a team around a quarterback that, I mean, obviously he's lost some respect in that locker room. And, so we're at the point now, what do the Jets do? Do you bench him for the rest of the season? Do you see how Mike White plays and go from there? Joe Flacco is going to be the active backup this weekend. So, I mean, maybe he just needs to be nurtured by Flacco and kind of sat down and look, this isn't how things work here in the NFL. If you want to continue to, one, have a job, and two, for your locker, your locker room teammates to have any kind of respect for you. I mean, I'd be pissed off if I'm out there busting my tail on the other side of the ball and the offense goes out and lays an egg. Look, it happened with the Rams. I mean, Jalen Ramsey came out and was very outspoken about the fact that the offense wasn't doing much on the offensive side of the ball. He has every right to say that because he's out there playing his tail off. So, and if your offense is not generating any kind of points or any kind of time of possession, your defenses, they're getting tired. They're getting worn out. And that's going to lead to big plays. We've seen it, we've seen it with teams like Los Angeles. So Zach Wilson just needs to grow up. And I hope that for his sake he does. It just, boy, that's a lot of money that the Jets spent on a quarterback if he doesn't mature.
That's the biggest thing here is they put so much of an investment on Zach Wilson, and it was met with skepticism from the moment he was drafted.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, you and I both know we've watched football a long time. We know when it comes to New York Jets and draft picks, there's always been that big skepticism. I mean, come on, drafting Kyle Brady over Warren Sapp wasn't exactly the pinnacle of achievements for the Jets.
Yeah, not great.
Exactly. And believe it or not, the New York Jets also hold the longest Super Bowl drought of any team that's been in a Super Bowl before. So it amazes me that here we go. The most from Jack's history, the most memorable thing Wilson has done so far is getting with his mom. Oh, geez.
I told you, hide your moms. All of them.
Yeah.
Gotta hide the moms.
That definitely was going to be there somewhere. I knew it. But, the Jets have a lot of good pieces right now, and they have, to me, one of the top corners in the league already in Sauce Gardner.
Yep.
And so you just got to, instead of tanking below, giving up on Zach Wilson already, give it one more year, roll with Mike White and Joe Flacco if need be, really try to mentally get – because the biggest problem for a rookie quarterback is when you have to throw him in there right away. Perfect example, Baker Mayfield. Talented quarterback, but lacks the maturity.
Oh, God, yeah.
To be a true leader. Example. And even when you had so many leaders around him in Cleveland, and by the way, thank you so much, Devlin, for tuning in. It's so great to have you all the way from the Big Apple in New York City. So thank you so much for tuning in. But yeah, most definitely. And having Baker Mayfield and see Baker, he's not doing any better for the Panthers because his leadership hasn't gotten any better.
Mm-hmm.
Injuries aside, Baker has not gotten any better. And Zach Wilson, if he doesn't mature, will not succeed in the NFL. And the New York Jets have too much talent with Sauce Gardner, Breece Hall, Corey Davis. I mean, and unfortunately, we don't know what's going to happen with Eli Moore, but he's a talented wide receiver as well. And Tyler Conklin as a tight end. So there's a lot of good pieces here for the New York Jets. Unfortunately, we don't know what's going to happen at quarterback, but I don't believe they're going to pull the plug on Zach Wilson at the end of this season.
And I don't think they should. I mean, look, he's got to have a chance to mature. I mean, he's still very young. I mean, obviously he's talented. I mean, we've seen him have great games. Now we've seen him have really bad games too. But, what quarterback doesn't? I mean, Russell Wilson, probably not a great example, but he's been terrible. I mean, look, there were Peyton Manning, Eli Manning. Those guys will be Hall of Famers, and those guys had bad games. I mean, I'm not saying that Zach Wilson belongs in that same category, but every quarterback struggles. At some point in time, every quarterback's going to have a bad game. It's how you handle it. And we've already seen that Zach Wilson has a problem handling any kind of adversity. That's something he needs to grow through and learn.
Absolutely. So with that, we're going to go to the other team that starts with the words New York, but, the whole argument about them not being New York team, who also play tomorrow, and that is the New York Giants. Now, this is another team that, and like I said, I've eaten my words every single week on this. I predicted to go 3-14 at the start of the season on our preview show. And Brian Dable has absolutely turned the culture around for this team. Saquon Barkley should be up for comeback player of the year, the way he's been tearing it up.
Yeah, agree.
The defense, phenomenal. Really, I mean, it's just unbelievable how well this team has played this year. But now you're in a crucial divisional matchup tomorrow against an you're injury riddled going in a crucial divisional matchup tomorrow against the Dallas Cowboys, who literally just dropped 40 on one of the NFC favorites in the Minnesota Vikings.
Right.
So, and this is a team Dallas, while New York's getting more injured, Dallas is getting healthier. Dalton Schultz is back.
Yep.
You got Dak Prescott back. Michael Gallup is back. I mean, Micah Parsons, who, in my opinion, shouldn't not just only be Defensive Player of the Year, but he should also be at the very least considered for MVP the way he's been playing.
No doubt about it.
But with that, he's banged up. So what is the biggest thing the Giants have to focus on when it comes to facing off against their NFC East rival tomorrow?
Run the ball. Try to run the ball. If you can do so, you keep Micah Parsons off of Daniel Jones. It's a good thing that Daniel Jones is mobile, because I'm telling you right now, I mean, because he's going to get chased. But if you run the ball, like I mentioned earlier, you run the ball, you keep the defense from being able to pin their ears back and come after you. That will help kind of offset Michael Parsons and that unbelievable front seven by the Cowboys. The other thing you have to do, you cannot turn the ball over. If you turn the ball over and give the Cowboys exceptional field position, you are asking for trouble. Ask Minnesota about that. You don't turn the ball over. The other thing is, on the defensive side of the ball, you've got to contain Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott. They combined for a total of 4 touchdowns against the Vikings last week. Tony Pollard, pure talent and speed alone, I believe, is the Cowboys' number 1 running back. Elliott, I think Zeke is going to be probably relegated to goal line situations. So, I mean, I think that Pollard is probably the better of the backs, and I think he probably gets the start tomorrow. But you've got to be able to keep that two-headed running back by committee, if you will, and keep them out of the end zone and keep them contained. I don't think you're going to stop Tony Pollard, but if you hold both of them combined to maybe 1 touchdown, and otherwise just try to run blitz and keep those guys at bay, I think you're good.
Well, and it's interesting enough because Tony Pollard not only should be the number 1 running back for Dallas, but there's also a good chance that Tony Pollard will not even be on the Dallas Cowboys next season because he's going to be hitting free agency. And Jerry Jones isn't one to really throw out the money out of the pocketbook. So
talk about getting paid, though. Pollard having such a blowout year.
This is the year
in a contract year. Woo, boy.
You know, and that, to me, that's kind of like what Lamar's doing right now with the Ravens.
Agreed.
I mean, he's another guy that's in MVP consideration, in my opinion. I mean, the difference is Lamar bet on himself.
Right.
He has nobody else protecting him in this. This is Lamar Jackson going out there saying, look, I'm worth more than what you offered me, and I'm going to show you why. And it could have easily backfired, but Lamar's out there. The Ravens are well ahead in this division, and he's got the results out there.
Yeah. And, like you said, he bet on himself. He has nobody protecting him. I mean, he is his own agent. And, the fact that he bet on himself and now he's going out there and performing, I'll tell you what, give it to the young man. He definitely knows how to promote himself. That's for sure. He does it every Sunday by lighting up scoreboards. And, I mean, you look at him, what weapons other than Mark Andrews? What does he really have? I mean, because and Andrews has even been banged up at times this year. So you're talking about a running back, he might as well be. He's his own quarterback, running back. I mean, hell, if he's fast enough, you could throw the ball up. He could probably go catch it too. I say that tongue in cheek, but he is such a multifaceted weapon that he really makes that offense tick in Baltimore.
Well, absolutely.
Blues are down 4-1 now.
Oh gosh! You picked the bad night to wear the reverse retro.
Well, they're undefeated in these, but they all good things come to an end. I mean, like I said, first game of a road trip. It's the day before a holiday, and they are getting just blown out right now.
Yeah. Speaking of St. Louis sport teams, I do want to bring up, heading into, we had talked about last week about Paul Goldschmidt winning MVP in the National League. He becomes the 5th Cardinal in history to win an MVP award after Pujols, Musial, Orlando Cepeda, and Keith Hernandez. Pretty good class, if you ask me, honestly. I think 2 of them are in the Hall of Fame. A third's going to be in the Hall of Fame, and you can make a damn good case for Keith Hernandez to be in the Hall of Fame. When the time comes, you'll be making a good case for Paul Goldschmidt to be in the Hall of Fame.
I would agree with that.
I think just a World Series title is the one thing that eludes him from that conversation.
And I think looking at individual awards, that him finally winning an MVP after finishing second, third, and fifth, I think is what it was. And when he's been up for voting before, I mean, finally winning one and certainly well deserved. That may have been what pushes him over that threshold to get him into the Hall of Fame. His numbers are unbelievable. I hope that he can keep it up for at least another year. Maybe not at this. The year he just had was unbelievable, but some average of that or some median of that, and if him and Arenado can continue it, maybe that World Series title is in the future. I mean, that is the one thing that has eluded him so far in his career. So, but the company you named, I mean, that's certainly an esteemed company to be a part of if you're Paul Goldschmidt.
Some of the greats. And you look at, when talking about the Hall of Fame and the potential for it, you look at some of the names that are coming up for the Hall of Fame ballot in 2023. They released the 28-name 2023 ballot. And there's a lot of notable names that are appearing on there for the first time. So perhaps the 2 most notable names that'll be on there for the first time, one of them includes former Cardinal outfielder Carlos Beltran, who hit over 430 home runs in his 20-year career. And former closer Francisco Rodriguez, good old K-Rod, and 437 career saves. That in of itself is a mark that you couldn't imagine making these days. Notable first-timers on this ballot next year also include Hudson Street, Matt Cain, John Lackey, who also is one of the few pitchers in history to defeat all 30 Major League Baseball teams. And then you have Ari Dickey, Jared Weaver, Bronson Arroyo, Jacoby Ellsbury, Andre Ethier, Mike Napoli, former Cardinal Johnny Peralta, J.J. Hardy, and Jason Worth. Meanwhile, on top of that, there are 2 notable players in mind that are still going to be on the ballot that I feel that should get in this year.
Scott Rowland?
First is Scott Rowland. Last year, he got 63% of the vote. And for those that don't know, you need 75% of the vote to get inducted. Yeah. And after him is Todd Helton, who spent his entire career with the Colorado Rockies, but without a doubt, perhaps the Rockies' greatest player of all time.
Former University of Tennessee quarterback Todd Helton.
That's true. 369 home runs, over 2,500 hits, 5-time All-Star, 3-time Gold Glove winner. I mean, exactly.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. But he got 52% of the vote last year. And then I believe, actually, Billy Wagner also has a good shot. He got 51%. For those that don't know him, nicknamed, I believe, I remember,
Billy the
Kid.
Yeah, Billy the Kid.
422 career saves. So, I mean, these are some interesting names on the ballot. And remember, if you don't receive, I believe, 5% of the votes, you are off the ballot.
Yeah, that's what happened to Jim Edmonds. Which, unfortunately,
look, say what you want about Jim Edmonds as a commentator, and believe me, there's plenty we've said.
Or his personal life.
Or his personal life, which is even more you could say about. The man should, at the very least, have not been a one and done on the ballot.
Yeah.
One of the greatest outfielders of the past quarter century. Great slugger, multi-time All-Star, World Series champion. But I think this is the year Scott Rowland finally gets his due.
It's
And
about damn time.
I wrote an article a while back, and I'll post it on the Interstate 70 Sports Media page on Facebook, uh, called the Cooperstown Case. It's a series
Yep.
I do about a lot of baseball players that I feel do have a good chance. And so far, I've gotten a couple names that eventually did get inducted. I've gotten two of them, Larry Walker and Ted Simmons. I've done cases on them in the past years, and they eventually got inducted. So yes, but we got one for Scott Rowland, and how is he not in yet, James?
Look, it's one. A lot of it was based on just his defense, and I don't know if it's we. I hate to say that the Hall of Fame is based on offensive numbers, but it's not. I mean, Ozzie Smith is a Hall of Famer, and obviously, offensively, he was not a juggernaut by any means. But I think what's happened is over the years, it has become an offensive, accolade being inducted into the Hall of Fame. With Larry Walker, those guys getting in, guys like Andre Dawson. And it's weird. All those names you named off, God, I think I've seen them all play. Right. But I mean, you're at a point now where, and it's like guys like Houston Street, Billy Wagner, finally getting closers into the Hall of Fame was a big deal. I mean, Lee Smith and his 478 saves, finally getting in last year. But, it is. I really think for position players, it's become all about offensive numbers. But if that's the case, then you would think Jim Edmonds would have been in. Edmonds was no slouch at the plate at all, and neither was Scott Rowland.
That's what I'm saying. Rowland had over 300 home runs, over 2,000 hits, had a 281 in his career, 7-time All-Star. I mean, and it's like, first off, and it's like we're not trying to degrade other guys that made the Hall of Fame.
Yes, I am.
See guys, okay, well, you are.
But to get Scott Rowland in, I would. I mean, because he deserves to be there just as much as anybody else does.
He deserves to be in there as much as Tim Raines does.
Well, right. I mean, and here's the other thing I look at. He may not have hit as many home runs as Mike Schmidt, but he was a better defensive player. And I think he was an overall better clutch player. And I got to see Mike Schmidt play, in the back half of his career in Philadelphia. When you look at it, I mean, Rowland was better defensively. I don't know. I guess if you want to look at it now, I guess Hall of Fame wise, not only are you looking at counting numbers, but you're also looking at WAR. And for those who are not initiated in the sabermetrics, WAR is wins above replacement of what an average replacement player would be at that position. And I mean, look, I'm trying to think back on that team. I guess Scott Rowland, if you were to, I'm trying to think who the backup third baseman was. Would it be like a Miguel Cairo? I'm trying to think who was utility players on those teams back in 04, 05, and 06. I guess a Scott Spezio. I mean, that would be your average replacement player. He there was no way he could touch Scott Rowland.
Yeah,
I mean, and I know it's hard you don't want to throw anybody in the bus, but I mean, Scott Rowland deserves to be in the Hall of Fame more than, I mean.
Well, there's Marlon Anderson. You got your Bo Hart, Hector Luna. I mean, these are guys that in 2004 would most likely be behind Scott Rowland.
Right.
And, you're exactly right on the sake of the wins above replacement. And, we look at some of these guys at the same time, Rowland also, I think the biggest thing that's actually keeping Rowland off isn't even his offense. First off, his defense is the big reason why he should be in. His offense should be a plus.
Right.
But I think the reason that Scott Rowland is being kept off at the moment is because of his late career injuries.
Gotcha.
After the 2006 World Series,
we had the collision with Hee-Sop Choi, the first baseman for the Cubs, and messed his shoulder up. And that was, after that, everything went downhill.
Right. But the thing of it is, here's something. There are only 4 third basemen, at least at the time when he achieved it, to have 2,000 hits, 500 doubles, 300 home runs, and 1,200 RBIs.
Brooks Robinson?
No, believe it or not. It is, and the thing of it is, the other 3 are Mike Schmidt, George Brett, and Chipper Jones.
Geez, all Hall of Famers.
All three of them are in the Hall of Fame. Scott Rowland got that in 2011, and he's not in the Hall of Fame. And it just blows my mind that he is yet to be in there. And I guess, and this is something I know we'll eventually have to have Sadie back on, because this is definitely his specialty, because we've talked about, most deserving and undeserving Hall of Famers and things of that nature. But is this the year where that on this year's contemporary era ballot, the three names that we've also had to talk about a lot, Bonds, Curt Schilling, and Roger Clemens. Do either of those three make it based on the contemporary era ballot?
No, but all three should be in. And I know that's the other thing I was going to say about Scott Rowland is he was never attached to any of the Mitchell reports or any of the PED reports.
Balco scandals and
right. But all three of the names you just named, Bonds, Clemens, and Schilling, should all be in the Hall of Fame. Schilling, if not on his postseason accolades alone, we all know he's a jackass and his political views, and he's just way out there. But, he was still a great pitcher. It's just like Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame. Should he still be banned from baseball? Yeah, but he should be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, you look at the playing career of all of these athletes, and look at Bonds, look at Clemens, look at Schilling. We talk about, they shouldn't be in, or some will argue that they shouldn't be in because of PEDs and whatnot. Not that it makes it right or makes it okay, but everybody else was doing it too. They were competing against a level playing field. It's no worse than saying Lance Armstrong shouldn't have his Tour de France titles taken away from him because he wasn't the only one blood doping. Greatness is greatness is greatness. It's no different than Reggie Bush's Heisman Trophy being taken away, even though we saw what he did on the field, and everybody else was taking money under the table as well. Not that it makes it right, but you can't take back what we saw these athletes do. We all know that they were a part of baseball history, and you cannot write the game's history without telling their story. You just can't.
You really can't. So we'll see how the Hall of Fame voting turns out.
And let's hope to God that these writers have a sense not to leave them blank. Don't get me started on these, the Baseball Writers of America voters.
There are, and then here's the remaining returning candidates. The guys that were on the ballot last year that are able to come back because they made the cut. And some of them I don't think will make it past this year. Others I would love to see make it past. Manny Ramirez, Omar Vizquel, Andy Pettit, Jimmy Rollins, Bobby Abreu, Mark Burley, St. Louis Sports Hall of Famer. I had the pleasure of seeing him earlier this year, and Torrey Hunter. So the deadline, the Baseball Writers of America have a deadline of December 31st to submit the ballots. And on Tuesday, January 24th of next year is when the Hall of Fame president, Josh Rawitch, will be making the official announcement. And we will see who exactly is going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame next year.
Speaking of Hall of Famers, jumping back to the NFL, Torrey Holt and London Fletcher were part of the NFL's 28 semifinalists to be inducted into the 2022 NFL Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio.
Absolutely, and both are well-deserved. London Fletcher, one of the most durable defensive players of all time, and Torrey Holt,
he was small, but he played like he was huge. As a middle linebacker, boy, he wasn't afraid to come up and stick you either.
Exactly, and then
loved watching London play.
It goes without saying with big game Torrey Holt. One of the most formidable duos alongside Isaac Bruce. Greatest show on turf. I think
it also shows you how good of a wide receiver was that Torrey Holt left the Rams, went to Jacksonville, still had, was he the leading? I want to remember or say it was like there was well, it may have been a decade or a 5-year period where he was the wide receiver with the most catches and most touchdowns in the NFL. I mean, big game Torrey Holt. I mean, and look, I'll remember I got to see this was at the old Dome. They had at the convention center. They had a big like card signing and like celebrity thing and big banquet afterwards, and he was there and got to meet and talk to him. His hands, his fingers from being broken so many times are, oh my God, like they point in different directions. He could be shaking your hand and his pinky pointing back at himself, but he'll sit there and tell you the stories of trying to catch passes from Kurt Warner, and he goes, you watch it on TV or you watch it on tape, and he doesn't look like he throws very hard. He goes, he broke my middle and my forefinger on one pass. It's like, okay. He talks about the fact that he played the NFC Championship game, which we mentioned. We were talking about last week, the 1999 NFC Championship game. Not only did Isaac Bruce have a pulled hamstring, but Torrey Holt suffered broken ribs during that game on a hit from John Lynch.
Oh, well, I mean, that's expected. It's
right.
One of the hardest hitters and fiercest defensive players. And I want to say one more thing about Torrey Holt.
That's
and then first off, I do like this. Fred Taylor, very well deserving Hall of Famer as well. It would be nice to see that happen. One more thing on Torrey Holt, and then we're going to get to our Survivor Series talk here on Roundabout Sports. And that is, I think another reason Torrey Holt's not in the Hall of Fame yet is because the era of wide receiver he was a part of.
Yeah.
I mean, let's think about this for a second.
Unbelievable.
You got Ocho Cinco, Chad Johnson. You got Terrell Owens. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. You got Terrell Owens. You got Randy Moss, Isaac Bruce, Joe Horn, Andre Johnson.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, let's see. I know there is somebody.
Tim Brown.
Tim Brown. You still got many great years of Jerry Rice there.
Yeah.
You got Rod Smith. I mean, you got so many guys. And then don't get me started. And then of course, this is the same. You have the tight ends like Jeremy Shockey, Dallas Clark, Tony Gonzalez. I mean, Todd Heap. So there's all these, and Steve Smith, wide receiver.
And here's the other thing that makes Holt's real quick, just to add on to what you're saying, that makes Holt's accomplishments so glaring. And even that whole period of wide receivers, folks, I don't know, in Jag's history, maybe he'll be too young to actually remember this. Hey, you could actually play football and hit people back then. Like if you came across if you came across the middle like Torrey Holt did so many times, those guys would take your damn head off. Jimmy Smith is another receiver. That's a good one.
Keenan McCardle. Yeah,
Keenan McCardle. That is a great one.
Yeah. Those guys, absolutely.
Do you think when his time comes, do you think Warrick Dunn is an NFL Hall of Famer?
I don't, but I will tell you.
I loved watching him play.
I loved watching Warrick Dunn play. And I will say this. If it wasn't for everything that happened off the field, we all know Mike Vick should be in the Hall of Fame.
Right. I got another one for you. Mike Allstott, the big fullback from Tampa.
Mike Allstott was a freak of
he was a battering ram. Yeah, it's like Daryl Moose Johnston. Yeah, like Moose Johnston. That was the other thing.
Then you even got Mushin Muhammad on the Panthers as well.
Yeah.
I mean, what is up with, you know what's so funny? Notice how we really haven't named. I have one Patriots receiver I can name that really stood out, and that was Deion Branch. And
you don't think Edelman?
Oh,
or Wes Welker?
No, I mean from this era that we're talking about.
Oh, okay, my bad.
And then Hines Ward for the Steelers. And we can go on and on about this. And I know in the future we will definitely talk more about this. But it's just, I think a reason Torrey Holt,
Santonio Holmes.
Look at Larry Fitzgerald. God,
yeah,
really, it's unbelievable. Anquan Bolden. Okay, we definitely got to stop.
You know what? Anquan Bolden did not nearly get the recognition he should have gotten because it was all Larry Fitzgerald. But you know, that's no different than Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt, right?
Look at Jimmy Smith. I mean, Jimmy Smith had the better stats, but Keenan McCardle was no slouch. And I think big game Torrey Holt, I think the reason is just because he gets lost in the mix of all these guys. And because you look at some of these wide receivers, the outlandish antics they did. Joe Horn pulling a cell phone out from from under the goalpost. Randy Moss mooning the crowd at Lambeau. Everything T.O. and Chad Johnson did.
Yep.
So Torrey Holt scored a touchdown, went to the next one, So
I did like the bob and weave. That was my.
Bob and weave was fantastic.
That was such a tight touchdown celebration.
So
God, those were the good old days.
Those were the good old days. Oh my gosh. With that, folks, first off, welcome back to Roundabout Sports. If you're just tuning in for the first time, I'm the maestro Jeremy Carp, alongside my dear friend and co-host Hollywood James Knox.
If you're just tuning in, where the hell have you been?
Exactly. First off, I was going to say, we're 45 minutes in, and we just got done talking about a lot of topics ranging from the latest NFL news, MLB news, Hall of Fame in baseball and football, and so much more.
Get your popcorn ready.
Get the popcorn ready, though, folks, because it is now time for the main event of the evening, and that is to talk about Survivor Series 2K22. And heading into Survivor Series this year, which is one of the 4 flagship pay-per-views of World Wrestling Entertainment. The other 3 being the Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, and SummerSlam. So usually, and each one basically has a quarter, like Royal Rumble kicks off WrestleMania season. And WrestleMania is obviously the biggest event. And then SummerSlam, biggest party of the summer. And Survivor Series, always after Thanksgiving, a big, holiday one. So this is the thing. We're going to take a look at Survivor Series 2022 first, the one that's going on right now. And then we're going to go back and look at some of the more iconic moments in the history of Survivor Series, and whether it be for the better or the worse, because James and we've talked over the past week on some of these moments that we didn't realize how many actually occurred at Survivor Series.
Right.
So first, right now, there's only 5 matches listed on the card as of today, Wednesday, November 23rd. And I know SmackDown on Friday night, they're going to probably finish things off and unveil more, and they're going to announce a 5th member for one of the teams. So, okay, the first match we got here is Austin Theory versus Bobby Lashley versus Seth freaking Rollins for the WWE United States Championship in a triple threat match. Now, backstory on this quickly. Austin Theory was Mr. Money in the Bank. After he realized there was nothing he could do to cash in on Roman Reigns because Roman Reigns is too damn good, he tried cashing in on the U.S. title instead. But before we get to that, we'll take a quick pause, get Chuck's comment in here. Yeah, I agree with Roland. I even think Andy Pettit definitely should be in there. Manny Ramirez should be. All very good names. I don't know as much about Jimmy Rollins and Torrey Hunter. 100% agree, though, on Andy Pettit, Manny Ramirez, and Scott Rowland. And, of course, Kurt Schilling, because, look, say what you want about personal life. This isn't the Hall of Good Morals. This is the Hall of Fame. If that was the case, a lot of old school players would be out.
Right. You beat me to it.
Exactly. So I'm just saying that right now. If that was the case, Ty Cobb wouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. So
truth. Yep.
Anyway, nevertheless, back to Survivor Series. Austin Theory failed cashing in the Money in the Bank contract on Seth Rollins because Bobby Lashley was kicking his ass. So with that, we have ourselves a triple threat match. And James, I want your thoughts on this. I mean, 3 very talented athletes. Seth Rollins definitely having one of the great revival year. Kind of fell off last year, but he's really shining a lot this year.
I dig the fact that Austin Theory is he's got more of a hard edge to him now. It's interesting. Obviously, they put him up in a squash match Monday night against Mustafa Ali. I didn't expect much out of that. Didn't get much out of that. There's just a dynamic there, and it's kind of weird because we think of these. You kind of get these rivals or these, these lead ups, if you will, these slow burns, and the dynamic between a guy like Austin Theory and Lashley was good. And obviously Lashley cost Theory a chance to win the US title. And then we've seen the dynamic between Theory and Seth freaking Rollins, and I'm digging it. I think this match is. It's a good thing that there is no disqualification and no count out or anything in this match. This match is going to be brutal. I'm not sure which way WWE wants to go here. Obviously, a note about this pay-per-view: there is no December event, no premium live event in December this year. So this is going to directly lead you into Survivor Series, or into the Royal Rumble in January. So, who do you want to hold that U.S. title going into the new year? I kind of think that Rollins probably retains this, but I think what happens is it's going to allow another rival or another slow burn off of this match that you could see kind of come to a head at Royal Rumble.
Yep. And Mark, my dad tuning in saying McGuire should be in the Hall of Fame. That's definitely for another big time, because that's a debate. 583 home runs, we already know. And I think we discussed it when Sadie was.
We did.
Yeah, and
we did. And on a note like that, if you put McGuire in the Hall of Fame, you have to put Sammy Sosa in as well.
Yeah, that's just all there is to it. And here's something from Jack's history. Does Cody return?
I think so.
My question to you: do you think he returns after Rollins? Because I do think Rollins is going to retain at Survivor Series.
Man, look, there's a part of me that
Cody comes back.
There's a part of me that could see Cody return Saturday night. I mean, if you go online and some of the vignettes and some of the videos and stuff leading up to this match, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't return Saturday night. He may not get physical with Rollins, but who's to say he doesn't cost Rollins the match too? I mean, you don't to be a distraction. You don't always have to get physical. We've seen that numerous times.
Yeah, look at Dexter Lumis.
Right.
Perfect example.
So I mean, don't count it. And apparently his rehab's gone really well too. Don't put it out of the realm of possibility that he doesn't show up Saturday night.
I do think he could. I feel like it's gonna wait till the Royal Rumble, because that's always where some of the biggest returns happen.
True.
But that's also a great thing about professional wrestling. We have in our minds the possibility of Cody being there, but we don't know that he'll be there a Saturday night. So we'll just have to see what happens. Next on our list of the match card, we got Ronda Rousey taking on Shotzi for the SmackDown Women's Championship. Ronda Rousey going in as the champion. I'm not going to lie. Ronda needs this. This is a great opportunity for Shotzi to really go up against Ronda Rousey here for the Women's Championship. But I'm not going to lie. Ronda needs this because this year has been lackluster for her. I've just not been as interested ever since everything with Charlotte. I have not been too interested in what Ronda Rousey has done, because and part of that's not even on her. It's just the booking that was going around during the end of the Vince McMahon era. Yeah. So the Liv Morgan Ronda Rousey storyline didn't pan out to what we had all hoped it would. And both of them suffered for it. So this is a good chance to see more out of Ronda Rousey and Shotzi.
I would like to see Ronda lose. I'm not a big Ronda Rousey fan. I am a huge Liv Morgan fan, and I was upset that it seemed to me, and you're right, the booking was terrible near the end of the McMahon regime. It's like they made her out to be a transitional champion, and I don't think that's fair to Liv. Liv has busted her tail. She's done everything that's been asked of her, whether it's been being put in a terrible group with Ruby Riott and Sarah Logan, or, really toil, if you will, on Superstars or Main Event or whatever side C show will be. And maybe Liv does join Bray Wyatt. That's a good point. But, I don't feel like her potential has been realized yet. I think there's so much left in the tank, and we haven't seen it yet. And that kind of disappoints me. With that being said, I would love to see Shotzi beat Ronda Rousey. It's not going to happen.
No, I don't think I don't see it happening, and I don't know when we will see a title change here for Ronda Rousey. It may not even be till like WrestleMania or something. I will say this. What I am interested in is a match between AJ Styles alongside with the OC and in his corner against Finn Balor, which features the Judgment Day in his corner. I tell you right now, ever since Edge left the Judgment Day, or I should say, ever since Triple H took over for WWE,
Right.
as far as creative and whatnot, it's been phenomenal. The Judgment Day have.
Right. I agree with
Because
that.
obviously it was great with Edge at first, but then things started to deteriorate because once again, poor booking. Nobody
Yeah.
could take them seriously as a threat. Well,
Well,
now you got Finn Balor, Damian Priest, Rhea Ripley, Dominic Mysterio, who should never cut a promo for the rest of his life.
no doubt.
But but other than that, they are still an intimidating force in the ring.
Yeah, he definitely should let Rhea speak for him. And I like the dynamic we're seeing between those two. I think something's going to play off of those two. I don't know if they end up being quote unquote romantically intertwined with each other, but I do think that at some point in time down the road, probably at Royal Rumble, you're going to see those two face. You're going to see those two face Beth Phoenix and Edge because of what happened that put Edge and Beth on the shelf. And that's the other thing too. Jags history mentions that the OC will be in New Japan coming up in December. That's the other thing that Triple H being in charge has done. It's opened up those doors to where those guys can go still, honor their contracts that they signed for those deals and those matches elsewhere and still know that the door to WWE is wide open. That's not something that would have been done under the Vince McMahon regime at all. But it is good to see that Triple H and Shawn Michaels are kind of allowing the talent to do that. I think, you're keeping everybody happy. That's the point here. That was one of the things that, everybody who went to AEW when Vince was still in charge was like, oh, we're breaking out of the prison. We're breaking out of jail. And now, if you listen to many, AEW has become the prison. So, I think what happens is, look, this is going to be one hell of a match. It's also going to be cool to see the dynamic of the OC and Judgment Day on the outside because we know that those two are that's going to turn into an all-out melee. So it'll be a good match. AJ Styles, Finn Balor, two of the better performers in the wrestling business today.
Absolutely. And we're going to go on now to the 2 War Games matches.
All right.
So War Games, for those that don't know, in professional wrestling, it's 2 teams of either 4, 5, or more locked inside a giant steel cage that encompasses 2 rings. Now, this was created in 1987 by Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream.
The Great American Dream.
In Jim Crockett Promotions of the NWA. And eventually it was held in WCW at the Fall Brawl events. It became one of the most well-known type of matches. And then it was brought back during the years at NXT. And, it's been phenomenal. So, but for the first time, it's come to Survivor Series, with one of them being a men's War Games match and the other a female. The first one we're going to go about is the female one, the women's War Games match, which is Damage Control, which is Bayley, Dakota Kai, Io Sky, alongside Nikki Cross and Rhea Ripley against Bianca Belair, Alexa Bliss, Asuka, Mia Yim, and we don't know who. On SmackDown, they'll reveal the 5th member, but I'm thinking, so here's my first question. Who do you think is 5th member?
Wouldn't it be cool if it was Charlotte?
So Jack's history says Sasha Banks or Becky Lynch will be the final member. No. I was leaning tonight more on Charlotte.
Yeah, I think it's Charlotte. I think it's Charlotte Flair.
I think it's Charlotte because, first off, it would be amazing if it was Sasha Banks. But the problem is I don't see Sasha returning unless Naomi's with her.
Agreed.
And because it was a big thing, they both left together. I think they'd come back together. Well, I heard it'll be revealed on Friday Night SmackDown where the 5th member will.
Yeah, that's what I heard as well.
They made it clear on Monday night, so we will see who that first person will be. But I believe it'll be Charlotte Flair, and I think that would be the biggest twist on things.
Yeah, I mean, Becky's still banged up a little bit. And she's still trying to recover. Sasha, I'm with you, doesn't come back until Naomi comes back. This is the perfect spot to put Charlotte. Perfect.
Yeah, but you know what? I think this is going to go to the heels. I think this match is going to Damage Control and Nikki Cross and Rhea. I think, especially because, I mean, they seem like a more put together unit. I mean, Damage Control, and I think also they need this win.
I think you're right.
I think Damage Control, they won. Two of them, Io Sky and Dakota Kai, won the Women's Tag Team Championships at Crown Jewel. We all thought Bayley was going to win the women's title, the Raw Women's title at Crown Jewel, but
very close to it.
I was surprisingly wrong on that. And I mean, surprisingly, not in that I'm never wrong, because I constantly am wrong, but surprising that I really thought Bayley was going to win and she didn't.
Right.
Now, here's something. What if one of the members turns on each other like Dakota Kai turned on Tegan Nox in NXT at War Games? So I don't see that happening where on Damage Control's team, but I could easily see it happening on whatever team, on whoever's the fifth member. Charlotte Flair could turn on Bianca Belair's team.
Well, and that's the thing.
Alexa Bliss.
I think Charlotte would be the one most likely to turn, just because Charlotte is like, she's always been like that. She's had a hard time working in a kind of a team concept because she's Charlotte Flair. That makes perfect sense if she were to turn. But here's the other thing. Charlotte and Bayley have a lot of history. And I think that's the other thing that makes me kind of more, leaning towards her being the fifth person. I could also see Charlotte being like, you quote unquote, you bitches get out of my way. I'm going to take, I'm going to win this for us all. I don't care. You can see Charlotte can be like, I'm the last one standing. I'm the sole survivor again. So yeah, I'm with you though. I do feel like Damage Control, well, they need some Damage Control. And I think they need this win more so than the baby faces do.
Yeah. And I think it builds them up a lot more heading into the new year, because I think there's so much potential with this stable. Especially under Triple H's guidance, because a lot of these women are NXT products. And so Ric Flair says Charlotte should face Bianca at WrestleMania. This could be a good way, because last year it was this past year it was Becky versus Bianca Belair, and it was a fantastic feud, I felt. So it'd be great to have Charlotte take on Bianca Belair. I know a lot of us are tired of seeing Charlotte in the title picture, but at the same time, if you're great at what you do, you got to keep her there.
Right. And I could see Charlotte winning the Royal Rumble and getting to Bianca that way.
And see, there you go. And then you got the men's War Games match. Now, this is where I'm going to kind of go the opposite of what I was going in the women's War Games match. You got the Bloodline, which is the best thing going on in WWE right now. You got Roman Reigns, Solo, Sikoa, Sami Zayn, and the Usos. Going up against the Brawling Brutes, Sheamus, Ridge Holland, and Butch, Drew McIntyre, and Kevin Owens. I'm telling you right now, the Brawling Brutes need this.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Owens needs this. Because guess what? This is what I think is going to happen, James. I think somehow the baby faces are going to win the match. Somehow it's going to be blamed on Sami Zayn.
Yep.
Sami eventually is either kicked out or splits from the Bloodline, teams up with Kevin Owens, and at either the Rumble or WrestleMania wins the tag titles from the Usos.
Yeah. I'm kind of with you, and I think that's I kind of think that's the way they need to go with this match.
It's perfect, booking. Even if it's predictable, that doesn't make it bad.
This match is going to be brutal. This match is going to be brutal, especially with the addition of Kevin Owens. Folks, if you have not seen Kevin Owens wrestle, one, where have you been? Two, Kevin Owens is crazy when it comes. We saw him do a cannonball off the damn WrestleMania sign during the pandemic.
Yes.
He's nuts. And with his addition to this match, that I really think, and there's obviously history with Owens and Zayn, whether it's good or bad, there's still history there. So I'm with you. I think the faces figured this one out, and I think that ultimately that it does get blamed on Sami Zayn, or there's a rift between him and Jey Uso. So which we've all seen that boiling over the last month or so.
Without a doubt. So we'll see how all this plays out. But with that, we got Survivor Series 2022, but let's go back to Survivor Series. Oh gosh, we're going to turn back the clock. Let's see. I'm trying to figure out the year. Because James, let me ask you something.
Yes.
How long have you been watching wrestling?
Oh geez, since I can remember. I mean, it's been a very long time. So I would say mid to late 80s.
All right. So we're going to turn the clock back to 1990.
Mm-hmm.
And an iconic man, or an iconic wrestler, I should say, in the history of professional wrestling made his debut at Survivor Series that changed the face of wrestling forever.
The Gobbledygooker? Ah, yes. Bingo.
Yeah. So, yeah, folks, you are seeing this correctly. This is the Gobbledygooker,
Big ass turkey.
Big ass turkey, making his debut at Survivor Series 1990. Which it's just, yes.
Dancing with Mean Gene Okerlund.
Dancing with the late great Mean Gene Okerlund. Meanwhile, and I'm really putting emphasis on this because, yes, this actually happened, and it just cracks me up. But later on that night, the real iconic legendary wrestler made his debut. That being the one, the only, The Undertaker.
Mark Calloway, yeah.
Calloway.
It's amazing because I sent that when I sent I think when I sent you that message, I was like, it's hard to believe that the Gobbledygooker and The Undertaker both debuted at the same Survivor Series in 1990. And the fact that The Undertaker was the surprise entrant for Ted DiBiase's Money Inc. team. And at the time, he was managed by Brother Love.
Yeah, pretty much.
And the annoying, I love you.
I love you. Good old Bruce Pritchard.
The one and only Dr. Bruce Pritchard, yeah.
The one and only. Yeah. So it's interesting because The Undertaker became arguably the greatest character. In my opinion, The Undertaker is the greatest character in the history of professional wrestling. I mean, and he's had so many incarnations.
I was going to say he was able to adapt it so well. Yeah.
Yeah. He became, the Ministry, so the goth type character.
They were doing the sacrifices. Yeah.
The sacrifices. Then you got the actual dead man, the immortal dead man, all this. And then at the same time, you got the Gobbledygooker, who is probably one of the worst characters of all time. Second only to the Shockmaster.
Tugboat. They had built up that egg hatching like over weeks. And I mean, I don't know. Well, the brainchild of one Vincent Kennedy McMahon. I mean, I don't know. It's so crazy though that we talk about it. I mean, that's the idea. Like the gimmick worked. I mean, look, 32 years later, we're still talking about it. Right.
So Vince is playing chess while we're playing checkers.
Apparently
the point of it wasn't to where it was supposed to be a great wrestler coming out of that egg. It was supposed to be a memorable character because the Gobbledygooker is as a memorable character. It's terrible, but it's memorable. Sometimes the worst moments are the most memorable.
That's right.
Most embarrassing stuff.
Right. Just like the Shockmaster.
Just like the Shockmaster.
Because we do remember that as well.
Oh, God. And if you're Tugboat, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, James, I want you, and this was your concept, not Survivor Series, but your concept for this
I wish.
show to make a lot of money, to come up
No
with
doubt.
memorable Survivor Series. And so, first off, Jack's History asked if they ever used it. Yes, they did. Most notably was in WrestleMania 17 X7, where they
Was that
had
the Legends Battle Royal?
Legends Battle Royal,
Yeah.
the
All
gimmick
right.
Battle Royal.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Which also featured Tugboat.
Yep.
And Jim Cornette and Bruce Pritchard, Brother Love, I should say. Earthquake. Oh gosh, Hillbilly Jim, the
The
Iron
Red
Sheik.
Rooster.
Yep, the Red Rooster. There's just so many people in there, and the commentary was Bobby Heenan and Gene Okerlund. So anyway, they had, and then a couple years ago, the Gobbledygooker returned and won the 24/7 title. So at Survivor Series, which
Yeah.
which
Oh my.
I want to say it is funny. You talk about the Undertaker and the Gobbledygooker making their debut at the same time.
Yes.
If the Gobbledygooker never appears again, their both last appearances will be at Survivor Series.
One will go down in infamy forever. The other one will go down in lore forever.
That's what I'm saying. I think that's the greatest thing. That might be one of the greatest things you ever told me, was the fact that the Gobbledygooker and the Undertaker debuted. And then I just realized if they never appear again anywhere, that'll be the last time both in the same event.
I know it.
So, but yes, the Gobbledygooker did make appearances afterwards, but and your drag history remembers when he won the 24/7 championship. Thankfully, that title's pretty much done. But anyway, so James, like I had said before, this was your concept to do this special episode on Survivor Series. So I want to send it to you because not only have you watched multiple more Survivor Series matchups than me or pay-per-views, but you've attended more.
Yeah.
And so give us a notable Survivor Series moment to kick us off. And if you have any folks tune in, comment, we'd love to hear some of your favorites.
So we'll jump from 1990 to 93, and this incident at Survivor Series actually set up a WrestleMania match, and that was the Owen Hart, the late great Owen Hart, turning on Bret and his family in 93 at Survivor Series, and that kind of led to their Royal Rumble match. It was those two. It was Owen and Bret taking on the Quebecers for the tag team titles. Bret was suffering from a knee injury. Owen kicked his knee out from underneath him. The next thing we realize is that they are fighting at WrestleMania 10. And that was if you remember, that was the WrestleMania in which Bret had to fight Owen. Lex Luger had to fight Mr. Perfect, I believe it. No, Luger got the shot at Yokozuna first, and he was defeated. And then Bret Hart went on to beat Yokozuna for the championship that night. So, so we go to 1993 and Owen turning on his family. We go to 1996. The Rock debuted at Survivor Series as Rocky Maivia. And then we go to 98, and this is I know we're skipping 97 and the Montreal screw job. Obviously, we'll get back to that. That's one of the bigger moments in not only Survivor Series history, but it was a turning point in in WWE altogether. But we go to 98. Stone Cold Steve Austin was hit by a car in 1998. We find out later on who did that, but that was Survivor Series Deadly Game in St. Louis. And that was an interesting Survivor Series, as they had the Deadly Games. Yes, they had the Deadly Games tournament, in which it came down to Mankind and The Rock. And that was what we refer to as Survivor Series Screwjob Part 2, as The Rock was crowned the WWF champion. And at the time, the corporate champion, as he was celebrated by Vince McMahon, and they screwed Mankind out of the belt. So, that was one of the bigger turning points in Survivor Series. I was there. That was probably one of actually Survivor Series was a lot of fun. And but just that the whole tournament idea, the Deadly Games, and then The Rock I'm sorry, it was 99 when Austin got hit by the car. That was in Joe Louis Arena at Detroit. We find out that it was Rikishi that ran him over.
And he
But
did it for the.
yeah, that one didn't make a whole lot of sense.
He did it for The Rock.
Yeah. So, but we go back to Survivor Series Deadly Games, and that was the whole idea and start of The Rock being the corporate champion, which was obviously a boost for The Rock's career as well.
I think so the first moment I have is, and I can't believe this even happened, but this is you talk about the hit and run with Stone Cold Steve Austin. Well, we're gonna go to another one where basically Stone Cold attempted murder.
Oh, yeah.
And so, and I gotta find this because this is unbelievable that this happened. But we're gonna go flash to, I believe.
I was wondering what you were working on over there. I could see the smoke coming.
Yeah, I'm like
just from the keyboard.
Right, and I knew, I was like, it's here somewhere. And I believe this was 2000 Survivor Series, where Stone Cold decided to operate a crane, a forklift crane, and lift Triple H in a car, halted it 40 feet in the air, and left it to fall to the ground.
Yeah.
Now, that's all good and dandy and whatnot, but only one thing. 2 weeks later, Triple H came back.
Yeah, he was fine.
I know. Say what you want about pro wrestling, but I
gotta
admit,
fun.
It was fun. At that moment, the thought that Stone Cold literally just dropped Triple H from a forklift, and bear with me 1 second, something's getting caught. As Triple H just, that was intense shit, especially back then in the Attitude Era, in the heat of the Monday Night Wars. Whew, no, thank you. And I think another moment for me, which I don't have a picture of at the moment, actually was when. This goes back to, I believe, 2011 or 2012. And I wish I could remember which one, but it was when Howard Finkel made his return to WWE to announce CM Punk as Alberto Del Rio's opponent. And it was such an iconic moment because the late, great Howard Finkel is perhaps the greatest ring announcer of all time. And for him to come out there, he's the one that was, there at the original WrestleMania and everything, and the New York City crowd was getting him all emotional. He got in tears at Madison Square Garden. So that's a moment that always stuck with me.
Yeah, that would be 2011 when CM Punk won his first championship.
Yep. So Jack's history has his greatest moment, or one of his favorite greatest moments here. The Shield debuting at Survivor Series. So Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, and Dean Ambrose, now better known to folks as Jon Moxley in AEW.
Yep.
Yeah. The Shield debuting at Survivor Series started some of the greatest moments in WWE history. The Shield, arguably one of the greatest trios in history.
Well, you go back to 2002 at Survivor Series. It was the first Elimination Chamber match
at Madison Square Garden. Basically the
mecca of sports entertainment.
The mecca of sports entertainment, and for a reason. So it was great seeing the first Elimination Chamber. I went to the Elimination Chamber in 2010, which actually happened to be the same day my grandfather, may rest in peace, passed away. And to see that match in person is just crazy. So to imagine the concept for the first time when it actually happened, I mean, and it was hyped up as something absolutely terrifying.
Eric Bischoff's brainchild.
It's the brainchild of Eric Bischoff, and people can say what they want. They can love him or hate him. That was a fantastic concept.
Right. We go back to, go back to 2014. Sting. So, I mean, and obviously that didn't lead up to a whole lot of matches in WWE, but it was very memorable at the time. Whenever he made his appearance, that was in defiance of the authority.
Yep, and that exactly, and it was hype. And once again, where did that take place?
MSG.
No, Sting's debut did not. That was in St. Louis.
Oh, that wasn't it? That was the.
2014.
Yeah, that's right.
Madison Square Garden may be the mecca of sports entertainment, but St. Louis, Missouri is the home of professional wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to wrestling at the Chase.
Like that moment right there happened at the Enterprise Center, which back then was the Scott Trade Center, and the crowd was absolutely on fire seeing that moment happen. Because this is that dream moment that nobody ever thought would happen. Like for guys like you, James, especially who grew up during the Monday Night Wars, to imagine Sting facing off against Triple H, and eventually they had a match at WrestleMania, where DX helped and the NWO came out and helped. I mean, that you couldn't believe it. Yep, Goldberg coming back in 2016. I mean, this is my thing. He beat it was one of the most shocking ones in the sense that he beat Brock Lesnar so fast.
Right.
That was the shocker of the night for that. So as you can tell, there's been so many great debuts and returns. I think now it's only fitting, and I know we've talked about it in previous episodes of Roundabout Sports, and I've talked about it on the Wrestle Talk podcast. And first off, last night was one of the greatest moments I've had on the Wrestle Talk podcast. Seeing Dwayne Gill, better known as Gilberg, show up after I spent a good amount of time saying why he should not have been in the tournament that we had him in on Wrestle Madness. So big shout out to the Night Owl, Renee Martinez, for that moment that I will truly never forget. I highly recommend checking out the Wrestle Talk podcast every Tuesday night. You can find it on their Facebook page or on Twitter, Blog Talk Radio, on YouTube. It's definitely a show worth checking out. With that, we are going to go back to Canada in 1997 at Survivor Series. Now, this has been perhaps one of the most talked about topics, events, and moments in the history of the industry. And basically, I'm going to put it to those tuning in bluntly. Bret Hart, the man that's locked in the move known as the sharpshooter, currently was heading to WCW. But he was the WWF champion. He did not want to lose the championship in his hometown of Montreal. And I understand that. But Vince was afraid of losing that championship to WCW. So he decided to, behind the scenes, along with Shawn Michaels and Earl Hebner, go in on this screw job to where Shawn Michaels would put Bret in the sharpshooter and they would ring the bell, even though Bret Hart didn't tap out. So basically, and Bret Hart proceeded to spit on Vince McMahon, destroy a bunch of equipment backstage and outside the ring. He punched Vince McMahon's lights out backstage. Bret Hart left, and it was a long time before the two reconciled, before Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, alongside Bret and Vince McMahon, reconciled. So, James, I'm going to go to you for this because, this is something that really shocked you back then in 1997. What was that like, having to experience, like, seeing that whole thing unfold?
Well, it was weird because, you didn't have the, like the dirt sheets like you have now. I mean, we didn't know watching that live exactly what had happened. I mean, everybody was trying to figure out, hey, what just happened here? Nobody saw Bret Hart tap out or give up or anything else. And, all of a sudden Earl Hebner's ringing the bell, and, the camera pans to Vince McMahon, who was then, spit on by Bret, and kind of the whole thing just unraveled there in front of you. I mean, and guys are, security's trying to get DX to the back, and, the crowd's irate. They're throwing things at Shawn, at Triple H, China, and Rick Rude. And, obviously Brett's in the ring, and he kind of spells out WCW with his finger, kind of in the air. And, you had heard rumors that, Bret was on his way out because Vince couldn't afford to pay him what WCW could. And WCW certainly, they should have capitalized off the Survivor Series screw job, and they didn't do it. I mean, that was red hot. Wrestling fans kind of all knew at that point in time what had happened, when you get to Monday night. And, in one of the top moments of Monday Night Raw that I've been, recently watching, they talked to Vince Russo, and he's like, look, everybody wanted to sweep it under the rug, but Vince Russo went to Vince McMahon, was like, look, we need to capitalize on this. You need to sit down and do an interview. And of course, that's the memorable Bret screwed Bret interview. But, it's funny going forward. Everybody's like, once it came out that Bret Hart was going, or there was a worry or a threat that Bret was going to take the WWF championship to WCW and Monday Night Nitro, that everybody was like, okay, so Vince was afraid that Bret would do to the championship belt what Alundra Blaze / Medusa did to the WWE Women's Championship, and that was put it in a garbage can on live television, on a competitor show. And, Vince did what he thought was best. And looking back at it, it led up to the then or now hated or memorable Mr. McMahon character. Without that happening, without Survivor Series 1997 and the Montreal Screwjob happening, then the Mr. McMahon character doesn't come to fruition, or doesn't come to fruition in the way it did, which then takes away the Mr. McMahon Stone Cold Steve Austin feud and the corporate foundation and the corporate ministry and all that. It takes away the steam from that. So really, we look at it, that is by far the most memorable, whether you like it or not, whether it's infamous to you or whether it goes down in lore forever. That's probably the biggest Survivor Series moment ever in sports entertainment.
And I love the point you brought up about how the whole Mr. McMahon character, because before that, Vince McMahon was just a commentator.
Yeah.
And, he did in-ring interviews and everything, but he was not really recognized as the on screen as the owner of the entire company. When that happened, when the whole Montreal Screwjob happened and everything came to light, Vince capitalized it, because the thing of it is, it was, how should I word it? I guess the best way to word it was Vince came off as a prick.
Yeah.
In the interview with Bret Screwed Bret, Vince came off as a prick. He's like, hey, look, there's a time-honored tradition. You drop the belt and everything before you leave and whatnot. So he went on about this, about how Bret was bad, and it's all his fault, and Vince isn't taking responsibility. And then you're absolutely right about the whole Stone Cold McMahon rivalry, which is perhaps one of the greatest rivalries in the history of professional wrestling / sports entertainment, because that was the forefront of the Attitude Era. That was that was the starter of the main, for the most part.
Yep.
That was the big thing. While the NWO was at its peak, Stone Cold and Mr. McMahon were at its peak. 1998 and 1999 were the biggest years of the Attitude Era. And definitely the forefront of that was, once again, McMahon and Stone Cold.
Right.
Guys like The Rock and The Undertaker and Kane and Kurt Angle and Triple H, obviously they were all top stars too. And once Stone Cold's injuries started to get worse, they were even more prominently shown. But it was the rivalry between the boss and the anti-hero character that really was what set the stage for so many things.
Well, we talk about St. Louis being kind of like the birthplace or one of the birthplaces of sports entertainment. And it's funny to think that you go back to October 5th of 1997. It was Bad Blood in St. Louis, which was obviously the month prior to this. And this is where you saw another debut, even though this wasn't Survivor Series, it was close enough, where you've got Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker in the first ever Hell in a Cell match. And near the end, Kane comes out and rips the door off of the Hell in a Cell, causing The Undertaker to lose the match to Shawn, which gave Shawn this title match to face Bret Hart. Does Bret have the same problem or same issue dropping the belt if it's The Undertaker he's dropping it to? Because we all know that The Undertaker kind of was the judge of Mickey Mouse Court in the WWE locker room. So, he was kind of like, he was, the judge, the jury, and the executioner. And so, and obviously he was the one that was most upset by it. And then, of course, once Vince goes to The Undertaker and tells him, hey, this is what we were afraid of, The Undertaker understood. You look at it, The Undertaker was one of the few superstars that, and he even mentions the fact that he was approached about leaving WWE to go back to WCW because he got a start there. It was Mean Mark Callis. And, The Undertaker obviously, declined that offer. So he was the one superstar that there was never a worry or a chance that was the case. And so you put the belt on Shawn going forward. Shawn defeats The Undertaker at Royal Rumble in 98, and then he loses the belt to Austin at WrestleMania in Boston. Obviously, Shawn was injured his back in that match against The Undertaker, and the rest is history. And you put the belt on Austin, and then you got Mr. McMahon and the corporation and everybody else there. And it's just funny. It's how that one moment in Montreal led WWE out of the shadows of WCW and defeating WCW in the Monday Night Wars.
Very much so. And once again, thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Please sure to keep on giving us some of your favorite or most memorable or least favorite Survivor Series moments, as Survivor Series will be streaming live on the Peacock app this Saturday night, and I'm looking forward to that. I know James is as well. But we got some more interesting moments here. First off, here's one from, there's two, the 2002 Survivor Series was interesting for multiple reasons. Number one, like you mentioned earlier, it was the Elimination Chamber. Number two, Brock Lesnar got betrayed by Paul Heyman. We know that Paul Heyman has been the advocate, the right-hand man for Brock Lesnar most of his career. Well, at one point, Brock Lesnar got betrayed by Paul Heyman. He F5'd the Big Show, and he thought that was the end-all, be-all. Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman sided with the Big Show, and that was that for a while. And then here you have Jack's History putting on The Rock and Cena teaming up in 2011 was memorable, going up against Miz and R-Truth, which I think the build-up for that was more memorable than the match, because it was just cool to think Rock and Cena were teaming up. And of course, a lot of this was just part of the build towards their WrestleMania match.
Right.
Which the one at WrestleMania 28 was far and beyond better. WrestleMania 28 is one of my favorite WrestleManias of all time. The one before, I want to bring up this pay-per-view, for example, Survivor Series 2005.
Raw versus SmackDown.
Raw versus SmackDown has always been a big prominent point for the most part at Survivor Series events. Well, I'm just going to tell you that 2005 was significant for so many ways. First off, this was the first Survivor Series pay-per-view that I had any true Raw versus SmackDown interest in, because of me being a wrestling fan. I started watching wrestling fully around 2005. And originally on the SmackDown Survivor Series team, Eddie Guerrero was supposed to be on the team, but he sadly passed away, and was replaced on the team. Now you had Rey Mysterio, Bobby Lashley, JBL, Randy Orton, and oh shoot, I know I'm missing somebody. Hang on, gosh darn it. See, and this is what happens sometimes. So, because I can remember that Batista, there we go. I knew, I was like, wait a minute, damn it, I knew I'm forgetting somebody. Going up against Team Raw, which is Big Show, Carlito, Chris Masters, Kane, and HBK. And that one in particular was just, I mean, because you had John Cena beating Kurt Angle, you had Teddy Long beating Eric Bischoff, you had Trish Stratus beating Melina. So this was Raw versus SmackDown to the core. And what was interesting is after a 24-minute match, Randy Orton was the sole survivor for Team SmackDown, and all the SmackDown wrestlers came out and celebrated. Everybody was happy, and then a casket came out. The gong started hitting, and everybody was worried about what it was. And then all of a sudden, out of a fiery casket, comes the Undertaker, who Randy Orton had set on fire in the casket months before. And it was just so memorable to see. And then Undertaker laying waste to the entire SmackDown roster in the ring. So no, definitely that is a moment that I will never forget. That pay-per-view in general is still to this day one of my favorite ones. And that one also took place in the and Randy Orton actually, believe it or not, was the one that ended up being the replacement for Eddie Guerrero.
Yeah.
In the Survivor Series match. But that one, any of the ones that involve Raw versus SmackDown specifically, have always been entertaining to me. Because it's the whole fight about brand supremacy. But for a while, that didn't exist because of the super shows, and then everybody just was on every show, and it didn't matter.
Right.
But then they brought back the draft and the brand extension and all that. 2016, I think, and 2017 were great examples of that.
Yep.
So while this one isn't really brand supremacy, in 2022, I think this one's still going to be a great one. And here, Jags History's got another one I want your thoughts on. This is the death of the American Badass.
Yeah.
When Vince faced off against The Undertaker in 2003. And Kane buried Undertaker alive.
Yep. And, it was all right. I mean, I'm more of a bigger fan of like the traditional Survivor Series matches. Like you go back and you had like Jerry Lawler in the King's Court versus Doink and all the miniature clowns and the Dinks.
The Dinks, I was about to say, is Dink the Clown.
Or when you had Shawn Michaels and his group against like the Hart family. Which was 93, back when Owen turned on Brett and Bruce and the rest of the family. Those are the ones that I really enjoy, the traditional Survivor Series elimination matches. The memorable matches like Vince versus The Undertaker, and like even back in 2006 where DX buried, rated RKO or whatnot, those are memories that and memorable matches or moments. But for me, like really what it comes down to is like Survivor Series was built on the tradition of the traditional 5-man Survivor Series or 5-women Survivor Series matches. Those are always been my favorite. Like that's kind of why I'm looking forward to War Games, is because you put the element of the 5-person teams in a destruction element where you're inside a cage and all hell's going to break loose Saturday night. And that's what I think kind of brings back the element of being the traditionalist when it comes to the Survivor Series pay-per-view and premium live events.
Without a doubt, I think that's what is going to be so exciting about this year's event. There's one more notable moment that I do want to bring up as far as Survivor Series goes. Now, a lot of people may not have liked this whole storyline, and I do totally understand why. Survivor Series 2001 was the feature of the end of the alliance.
Yeah.
It was the one, it was the winner take all Survivor Series match between the Team WWF and the Alliance. And the Alliance was basically WCW wrestlers and ECW wrestlers, because at that time, flash forward earlier in that year, Vince McMahon buys WCW and he legitimately did. And ECW was basically bankrupt. And so you got guys from WCW and ECW trying to take over WWF, led by Shane and Stephanie McMahon and Paul Heyman. And they become the Alliance. Well, Vince McMahon is led by, or leads Team WWF. He has The Rock, Kane, Undertaker, Big Show, Chris Jericho. And meanwhile, on Team Alliance, you have turncoats, Stone Cold and Kurt Angle. Then you got RVD and Booker T, and then you got Shane McMahon.
Yep.
And a lot of people didn't like that. The only two guys that were that were outside of WWE in reality were Rob Van Dam and Booker T, which made sense. And it's interesting because Chris Jericho was the one that came from WCW and ECW in the first place, which I got a kick out of. And Kurt Angle almost became a member of the ECW roster if it wasn't for the fact that Raven decided to crucify the Sandman live on air. But that's neither here nor there. I'll tell you that right now. Yes, that's what happens when you have a crucifixion at a professional wrestling event.
And that's the one reason that Kurt Angle did not join ECW, because of his practicing Catholic faith. And he was in attendance to that event when the Sandman did that. Oh my God. What was that on? I was on one of maybe it was like the 50, like a countdown of the 50 top moments or most controversial moments.
That was on WWE Confidential too, I think.
Sure was.
Yeah, and he was like, "Look, you'll be hearing from my attorney if I see my name and face near any of this, because no, not doing that." So, but like I said, neither here nor there. But the Alliance storyline, the invasion storyline, took place basically all of 2001.
It would have been so much better had WCW and Time Warner at the time not given these huge contracts out to the big stars, because they were pretty much being paid to sit at home and do nothing. Had those big contracts not been handed out, you would have seen, or could have possibly seen, the likes of Sting and Goldberg and, Conan and all of these guys make their debuts then. That is what would have led the Alliance. Instead, you had guys like Sean Stasiak and
Mike Awesome
and Mike Palumbo, and Palumbo was a decent wrestler. I think he's more known for his tag team with Chuck and
Chuck Palumbo and Sean O'Hare.
Thank you. Yes.
And then Mike Awesome, and then you got you had guys like in the WWF like Taz and Kurt Angle and Stone Cold. They turned. You had Raven in there. But you're absolutely right, because that was the big thing, was the fact that, look, you get the 5 best from WWF teaming up against the 5 best from WCW/ECW, or take the 5 best from WCW, the 5 best from WWF, and the 5 best from ECW. Holy hell, that would have been an
unbelievable match.
Unbelievable, would be recognized and talked about decades from now.
Yeah, unfortunately.
But because then you would have RVD, the Sandman, Tommy Dreamer, Sabu, and Taz. That's a freaking team right there.
Yeah, Sabu was nuts in his own right.
That's what I'm saying. And then, WCW, you would have probably Sting. You would have Booker T. You would have guys from the NWO.
You could have Rick and Scott Steiner.
You could have Rick and Scott Steiner. There's so many guys in WCW that you could have had.
Yep.
And
Buff Bagwell,
and then with WWF, obviously they got that team right, But you could have had Stone Cold, The Rock, and then Kane, The Undertaker, and then either Jericho or the Big Show or any, like, there's so many possibilities of that. But because of the Time Warner contracts, Booker T was one of the few that said, look, I don't care what I'm making. I'm still going to show up and wrestle because that's what I love doing. But they had a match where it was Buff Bagwell versus Booker T on Raw, and nobody really gave a shit.
Yep.
And so, you know, at the end of the day, the Survivor Series 2001, it's memorable because the alliance did end. Yeah. And I'll tell you that. And trust me, people loved that fact. And it's funny because it led to the return of Ric Flair, because Stephanie and Shane sold all their stock to a consortium, and the leader of that was good old Ric Flair.
And the funny thing is, that led to an unbelievable rivalry between McMahon and Flair from 2001 through 2002, which actually it all come together with them having to fight each other. And look, I just finished that up. So I've been on a mission ever since the WWE Network started, and now obviously Peacock, but all of its transfer. I have gone in order of all the Raws and gone through and Now, I obviously don't sit down and watch all of it. I kind of hit the matches I want to, but I have an idea of what's going on storyline-wise. And I'll tell you what, a matter of fact, I'm at the point now where they're doing the guest hosts, and Big Ben Roethlisberger is the guest host of the episode I'm on right now, where DX is trying to get their shot at the tag titles against Jericho. The Big Show and Jericho, and obviously this leads to them winning their one and only tag team championship by beating Jericho and the Big Show.
Goodness gracious.
More notes. So, but yeah, I mean, Survivor Series is one of my. Look, the Royal Rumble is my favorite pay-per-view. But Survivor Series stuff.
You know it.
I know it. Survivor Series has a lot of memorable moments, and obviously leading up to this Saturday's event. So, yeah, I think we covered quite a bit. I mean, that's one of those where, in Jack's history, has provided us with a lot of talking points. The thing is really with that event, you could go on and on and on and on, but you know, we got to kind of try to trim it down to the big ones. And if you go back to it, like I said, the granddaddy of them all is obviously the Montreal Screwjob in '97, because without that event, without the points and the turning points and the big time, obviously, culmination of it at the very end with Shawn Michaels becoming the champion, without that event taking place, the Attitude Era in WWE, I mean, we may be watching WCW pay-per-view this weekend instead of WWE. You just never know.
Without a shadow of a doubt. Well, James, I'm telling you right now, it has been an absolute pleasure.
Always, my man.
It's been wonderful. Folks, I hope you've enjoyed Roundabout Sports this week, as we enjoy doing this show every week. And like I said, be sure to find us on Facebook, on Twitter, at Roundabout Sports, Interstate 70 Sports Media. James and I are both on Facebook and Twitter. If you want to advertise on us, you know, we support local all the time. So, you know, be sure to DM us on either the Interstate 70 Sports Media page or
slide into my DMs.
Slide into DMs. I think that's actually what I mean, I kind of said it like that at the bottom, but I'm not going to exactly say slide into James' DMs because his wife might get upset. So, see, I'm single. I don't have to worry about that at the moment.
Jeremy's got jokes over there tonight, everybody.
Yeah, exactly. You started the show with wearing a turkey hat. I don't want to hear it from you.
Hey. What is wrong with my turkey hat? He's even got a whistle, see?
Oh, God. Look, see, we got a turkey there.
Hey, look, everybody, it's Jerome Boger. Oh, man. Oh, jeez.
No, see, the funny
that's a turducken.
That is the turducken.
Yes.
No.
In memory of the great John Madden.
In memory of the great John Madden. No, this is actually what Jerome Boger looks like.
You would do that right after I took a drink. That's wonderful.
I had to. That's
Wow.
Schlumberger for you.
Yeah.
Anyway, so see, we can get away with that stuff. I love it. And yes, absolutely. We are getting to the point of Thanksgiving is tomorrow. James, what do you got planned for lovely Thanksgiving?
Lots of food. I am going to be preparing my famous ham tomorrow. I do this ham with brown sugar. I kind of come up with this glaze. It's brown sugar, mustard, honey, like pineapple and cherry juice, and then kind of turn it into a marinade. And I will brush it all over a ham, and then throw the ham in the oven. And ask Jag's history; he likes it. He's a big fan of the ham. So
he's a big fan.
Yeah, he's a big fan of the ham. So, yeah, happy Thanksgiving, Mark and Devlin. And so I'll be doing that tomorrow. And then a lot of football tomorrow, obviously, early on during the day. And then there's no telling. It's one of those things where about 4 or 5 o'clock, I'll start to get a little tired and then take a quick nap. And then you get up and eat some more and kind of go comatose. And yeah, so just a day of relaxing and just kicking back and, just kind of realizing that no matter how, the World Cup is on as well. That's right. There's some big games tomorrow, and the United States has a tall task on Friday as they take on England after drawing Wales on Monday. Yeah, I guess it was Monday that they played each other. And boy, I tell you what, that's a heartbreaker. You needed to get the W against Wales because obviously England's going to be a tall task, and then of course you've got Iran, or Iran rather. I didn't Iran anywhere. You've got Iran next week. So anyway,
Thanksgiving table.
There you go.
And then, look, if anybody knows about the World Cup, it's that man right there, Devlin. I'm telling you right now, one of the smartest. And as a football player himself, trust me, I don't watch a lot of soccer unless it's like obviously World Cup or like Olympic soccer. But obviously with STL City, joining the MLS next year, I mean, obviously I'm going to support them because all about progress and growing in St. Louis. So, I'll get into it a little bit more. I understand the rules of the game. It's just, to me, it's too slow. Then obviously there's not very much scoring, but the United States, boy, they've got their work cut out for them. Christian Pulisic and them have got to try to get a win against England, which is a tall task on Friday. Without a doubt. Before we close it up, James, give us a final look at the Blues score tonight. I know it wasn't.
We don't want to.
You have to.
So Tage Thompson strikes as well as Alex Tuck, and the Blues fall to the Buffalo Sabres 6-2. And so Blues fall to the Sabres 6-2. It ends the 7-game winning streak. The Blues will be back at it Friday night at 7. I believe it's Friday night at 7 o'clock as part of TNT and the NHL's Thanksgiving Showdown. They take on the Tampa Bay Lightning Friday night at 7. And then the Blues turn around Saturday night and take on the Florida Panthers in a back-to-back. That's a 5 o'clock face-off before heading back home on Monday to take on the division-leading Dallas Stars.
There's some key matchups coming up right there, especially when it comes to the Stars.
Yeah, the schedule for the Blues does not get any easier at all. You then have Carolina, then you've got a back-to-back with the New York teams, with the Rangers and the Islanders. Look, the rest of the league doesn't care that you are trying to dig yourself out of the basement that you put yourself into. And the Blues, tonight was just one of those nights. I was telling a friend earlier, look, they expected Buffalo to come out, or the Blues to come out and handle Buffalo. It's the first game of a 3-game road trip. You've got a holiday tomorrow, and I guarantee you, as much as you don't want to admit it, they are players, they are human beings, and they were probably looking ahead, 1, to the holiday, and then 2, to that matchup against Tampa on Friday, because Tampa is, they won the Stanley Cup 3 years in a row. So, that's what they're looking ahead to, and probably looking ahead to the team the day off tomorrow and time for Thanksgiving. So, they won 7 in a row. They got themselves out of the basement in the Central Division, and now you just have to put this game behind you tonight. This Buffalo Sabres team is a young, feisty team. So they had lost 8 in a row. Now they've won back-to-back games. So, hey, it's the NHL. Anything can happen on any given night.
Absolutely. And as Devlin says, soccer may look slow on TV, but when you go to a game, it's crazy. And James, you and I both know that as we'll be starting to go to the St. Louis Ambush games as their season kicks off in just a couple days. Friday, November 25th is their opener. And then November 26th is the home opener for them.
Right.
And
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to that. Actually, I
right.
believe, let me double check. Yeah, it'll be Kansas City. It'll be St. Louis versus Kansas City in Kansas City. And then on the 26th, it'll be Kansas City versus St. Louis, followed by, oh gosh, then I think it's going to be a little bit, if I can remember the schedule, because I know they're Milwaukee's playing in St. Louis. Yeah, so here we go. So these for the first two games, against the Kansas City Comets, obviously a huge rivalry in the interstate. Meanwhile, Saturday, December 10th, they will be at yeah, you're right. I'm once again messed up again. All right, folks, here we go. Friday, November 25th. We got to listen carefully on this. Friday, November 25th, 5:05 Central Time. The St. Louis Ambush will be playing the Kansas City Comets at the Family Arena in St. Charles, Missouri. That is the first game, and that is the home opener. It is Saturday, November 26th, that they will be heading to Kansas City at the Cable Dahmer Arena to take on the Comets. And they will come back on December 11th after having a road game in Milwaukee, where they'll be facing Baltimore at the Family Arena. So schedule starts picking up, and meanwhile, like I said, Devlin's out in the Big Apple, so NYCFC is his team right there. Excuse me. And of course, that is repping the blue and white, or I guess I should say blue, dark blue and white, however you want to look at it. But either way, I'm excited. Also, be sure that check out Dynamo Pro Wrestling this Saturday at Concordia Turner's Gymnasium. It's their Thanksgiving Slam event. And Benjamin Truss is going to be taking on the Snitch, who, Lord have mercy, is finally getting his long-awaited title opportunity. And I'm not looking forward to it at all. But we'll see how it goes. Hopefully he loses. I would love nothing more than to see the Snitch lose yet again. But tickets are $15 in advance, $18 at the door. Be sure to check them out. And I will be there. Luke Skywalker Roberts will be there. Big Sexy Chris Rodell will be there. We're looking forward to it. So with that, folks, we're going to close up shop here by first showing the NAMI hotline. The National Alliance on Mental Illness. You just call at 1-800-950-NAMI. So understand that in the world we live in, mental illness is a cause that doesn't get recognized enough and enough attention and funding, but is so very important. Your mind, everything matters so much. And don't ever let anybody invalidate your feelings or say, it could be worse, it could be something else. That doesn't mean that what you're going through matters or doesn't matter, because it does. And we always put at the end of the show the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, and for that you just dial 988. It used to be a longer number, but now it is shortened to 988. And understand that you are never alone in this world. The line is open 24/7, 365, 366 on leap years. And understand that it just takes one phone call, one message. That person is out there that loves you and cares about you, because the road to life is not one that needs to be traveled alone. And we thank you so much for tuning in this week and every week, and we look forward to next week. But until then, have a happy Thanksgiving on behalf of Hollywood James Knox and myself, the Maestro Jeremy Karp. And as always, remember, life is a book full of empty pages just waiting to be written in. Make your lives worth reading. Good night, everybody.